TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu instructs his senior Israeli delegation to cancel its visit to the United States, that after the Biden administration refuses to veto a UN Security Council resolution demanding for a ceasefire. Following the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 2728, which lacks a condemnation of Hamas among others, the Islamist group announces its decision to harden its position related to a hostage release outline. Despite tensions at the backdrop, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant holds a string of meetings with senior U.S. officials in Washington. Jerusalem's leadership laments the Biden administration for its break from U.S. policy at the United Nations, as Washington, alongside London and Paris, essentially allowed Algeria, China, and Russia to pass a resolution, albeit non-binding, demanding for an immediate ceasefire, while refusing to condemn Hamas for its atrocities committed on October 7th and the days that ensued.
The result of the voting is as follows: 14 votes in favor, 0 vote against, 1 abstention. The draft resolution has been adopted as Resolution 2728, 2024.
Algeria, which has been praised by the Islamic Republic of Iran as a champion in defending the Palestinians in the fight against Israel, thanked the council members for their support in passing the non-binding resolution and emphasized the need to double down on its demand to bring the war in the Gaza Strip to an end.
I would like to thank all the council members for their flexibility and the constructive way that allowed us today to adopt this long-awaited resolution. A resolution that calls for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in order to put an end to the massacres that unfortunately are still ongoing over the past 5 months.
It is important to know that in contrast to claims of a massacre and other groundless libels directed at Israel, the United Nations has repeatedly cited, based on data accumulated since the start of the 1980s, a ratio of 1 combatant for every 9 civilians as the average of collateral damage in modern wars. Within this context, even if one relies on figures published by the Islamist Hamas of approximately 32,000 Gazan casualties, while taking into account the IDF's corroborated figure of approximately 14,000 terror operatives eliminated since the Hamas massacre of October 7th, the so-called combatant to civilian casualty ratio stands at a staggering 1 to approximately 1.2, which is unprecedented in terms of modern warfare and attests to the professional and moral conduct of the Israel Defense Forces at a time when its enemies, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip, deliberately operate from within densely populated areas and civilian structures as a method of war. It is important to know that the 1 to 1.2 ratio figure does not factor in failed launches, which repeatedly occur when Palestinian terror operatives conduct indiscriminate rocket fire towards civilian communities in Israel. Consequently, these failed launches have repeatedly struck within civilian neighborhoods in the Gaza Strip, causing countless fatalities, which Hamas health authorities have conveniently blamed Israel for. And while Jerusalem remains objectively committed to observing international humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention, extensive pressure by Islamist nations and fringes of U.S. society and electoral swing states, the Biden administration has opted to side with Moscow and Beijing in ratcheting up pressure on Jerusalem.
We appreciated the willingness of members of this council to take some of our edits and improve on this resolution. Still, certain key edits were ignored, including our request to add a condemnation of Hamas. and we did not agree with everything in the resolution. For that reason, we were unfortunately not able to vote yes. However, as I've said before, we fully support some of the critical objectives in this non-binding resolution, and we believe it was important for the Council to speak out and make clear that our any ceasefire must come with the release of all hostages. Indeed, as I've said before, the only path to a durable end to this conflict is the release of all hostages.
It is important to highlight that alongside the support of Algeria, Russia, and China, France, Britain, Switzerland, Slovenia, the Republic of Korea, Japan, Malta, Ecuador, Guyana, and Sierra Leone have all voted in favor of the anti-Israel resolution. Meanwhile, the Islamist Hamas released a statement in which it praised the Security Council at large and Algeria in particular for their supportive resolution against Israel. Moreover, Hamas announced that it has once again hardened its position in negotiations vis-à-vis Israel, demanding, quote, a comprehensive ceasefire, withdrawal from the Gaza Strip altogether, the return of the displaced, and a real exchange of prisoners, which the Islamist terror group demands to include thousands of convicted terror operatives with blood on their hands. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, the Prime Minister's office released a statement in which it blamed the Biden administration for departing from its principled policy of supporting Israel at the United Nations, and by doing so, it essentially gives Hamas hope that international pressure will force Israel to accept a ceasefire without the release of hostages, thus harming both the war effort and the effort to release the hostages. Moreover, the Prime Minister Netanyahu made it clear that should the U.S. depart from its principled policy and not veto this harmful resolution, he would cancel the Israeli delegation's visit to the United States. Therefore, in light of the change in the U.S. position, Prime Minister Netanyahu decided that the delegation will remain in Israel. Moreover, in light of Hamas's decision to harden its position in negotiations, the Prime Minister's office announced, quote, Israel will not address Hamas's delusional demands. Israel will pursue and achieve its just war objectives, destroying Hamas's military and governmental capacities, release all of the hostages, and ensuring Gaza will not pose a threat to the people of Israel in the future. Meanwhile, in Washington, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant began a string of meetings with senior U.S. officials, as relations between Jerusalem and Washington have evidently reached an all-time low.
I am beginning now my visit to Washington as a representative of the State of Israel and on behalf of the government of Israel. I came here for the purpose of clarifying the need to strengthen the IDF and strengthen the power of the State of Israel. Already now, in the first meeting with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, I will clarify the importance of destroying the Hamas regime and returning the hostages to their homes. We will act against Hamas everywhere, even in places where we have not yet been. We will create an alternative to Hamas so that the IDF can complete its mission.
While Minister Gallant was meeting with National Security Advisor Sullivan, the National Security Council's coordinator for strategic communications, namely retired Rear Admiral John Kirby, defended the Biden administration's decision to abstain at the United Nations Security Council vote.
Our vote does not, I repeat, does not represent a shift in our policy. We've been very clear, we've been very consistent in our support for a ceasefire as part of a hostage deal. That's how the hostage deal is structured, and the resolution acknowledges the ongoing talks. We wanted to get to a place where we could support this resolution, but because the final text does not have key language that we think is essential, such as condemning Hamas, we couldn't support it. Though, because it does fairly reflect our view that a ceasefire and the release of hostages come together, we abstained.
Admiral Kirby went on to address the visit by Jerusalem's top defense official.
Defense Minister Gallant is here today, meeting with Mr. Sullivan, in fact, as we speak, He'll have other meetings while he's in town today and tomorrow, certainly with Secretary of Defense Austin tomorrow. And so we certainly look forward to having those discussions with him and making it clear to the Defense Minister that the United States continues to stand with Israel as they fight Hamas and will continue to work with might and main to get those hostages back with their families where they belong. Well, I also said I fully expect that Rafah will come up in the context of these conversations, the one he's having with Jake right now. I think he's going over to the State Department this afternoon and, of course, at the Defense Department tomorrow. Absolutely, I think we'll have an opportunity to talk about Rafah, but it probably won't be a full replacement for what we were hoping to do with a broader, larger delegation of Israeli counterparts. That said, and I also said earlier today that just because this meeting is now not going to happen doesn't mean that we aren't still going to look for an avenue and an approach to be able to share those alternatives with the Israelis.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. It is important for us to highlight that TV7 Israel is a donation-based non-profit ministry with all of our productions available free of charge. Therefore, if you're blessed by our productions, we would deeply appreciate it if you'd consider making a donation. You can do so by visiting our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I'd like to encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Essen wishing you an Erev Mevorach. God willing, we'll see you during our upcoming TV7 Israel updates. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.